Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Griffin.
Here.
Bishop. Conwell. Gray. Hairston. Harsh. House Jones. Jones. Casey. Kelly. Moorer. McCormack. Polensik. Santana. Slife. Spencer. Starr. You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. Would everyone please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll make the following statement. This meeting of Cleveland City Council is a lawful meeting under Section 60504 of the Codified Ordinances. No person with purpose to prevent or disrupt a lawful meeting shall do any act which obstructs or interferes with the due conduct of such meeting. Members of the public are invited to speak only under the rules set by this council. Disruptions, including but not limited to speaking out of turn and making loud noises and loud utterances, are in violation of the rules and interfere with the due conduct of this lawful meeting. Such disruptions may constitute a misdemeanor and a violation of Section 60504. Anyone who disrupts this lawful meeting in violation of the codified ordinances commits misdemeanors and is subject to prosecution. The following is the first and only warning. If this meeting is disrupted, I will gavel a halt to the proceedings and direct the assembled officers to escort any person participating in the disruption out of the chamber. Once persons participating in the disruptions are outside of the chambers, the officers will close the doors and the disruptors will be handled as directed by the Director of Public Safety. The council proceedings will not begin again until those that participated in the disruption have left the chamber and the chamber doors are closed. Disruptors are not to be allowed back in the chamber after the meeting resumes. Again, this is the first and only warning. Madam Clerk, please dispense with the journal.
By Councilmember McCormack, that the reading of the minutes of the last meeting be dispensed with the journal approved, seconded by Councilmember Casey.
Thank you. I'm going to make this statement. Tonight, we will cover all items of business, but without objection by council, we will change the order of business for this meeting. We will start with the second reading of legislation, then first reading, then follow this order of business: communications, condolence, and congratulatory resolutions, presentations, and public comment. Then council introductions, announcement, and miscellaneous. Second reading emergency ordinance.
Ordinance 160, 2024, by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request, to make appropriations and provide current expenses for the daily operation of all municipal departments of the City of Cleveland for the fiscal year from January 1, 2024 until December 31st, 2024.
Thank you. Second reading emergency ordinances to be passed.
Ordinance 73, 2024, by Councilmembers McCormack, Bishop, and Hairston by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to issue a permit to 4116 Lorraine LLC to encroach into the public right-of-way above Lorraine Avenue by installing, using, and maintaining a new entry canopy. Ordinance 107, 2024, as amended by Councilmember Casey, authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter into a grant agreement with the Urel Group, LLC, or its designee, to provide economic development assistance to partially finance renovation of a building located at 12400 Crossburn Avenue to build an indoor pickleball facility. Ordinance 109, 2024, by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Human Resources to enter into one or more contracts in order to provide professional services necessary to administer and provide group prescription insurance coverage for the City of Cleveland employees for a period up to 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Human Resources. Ordinance 114, 2024, by Councilmembers McCormack and Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Port Control to exercise the first option to renew a contract with Cook Paving and Construction for the public improvement of repairing, maintaining, and installing concrete on runways, taxiways, ramps, roadways, and other paved services for the various divisions of the Department of Port Control. Ordinance 115, 2024, by Councilmembers McCormack and Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into a lease agreement with Lee A. Baggett, MD, for the lease of certain city-owned space in the passenger terminal building at Burke Lakefront Airport for the operation of a medical examination office for pilots for the Department of Port Control for a period of 1 year with 4 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Ordinance 116, 2024, by Councilmembers McCormack and Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into a lease agreement with T&G Flying Club for the lease of space in passenger terminal building at Burke Lakefront Airport for operation of a flight training school, aircraft rental program, and related services for student pilots for the Department of Port Control for a period of 1 year with 4 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Ordinance 117, 2024, by Councilmembers McCormack and Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the purchase and/or rental by one or more requirement contracts of heavy-duty equipment and other equipment with operators and necessary labor, materials, or equipment needed for the various divisions of the Department of Port Control for a period of 2 years with 2 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Ordinance 118, 2024, by Councilmembers McCormack and Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the purchase by one or more requirement contracts of automatic doors, including labor and materials needed to install, inspect, repair, replace, and maintain automatic doors for the various divisions of the Department of Port Control for a period of 1 year with 3 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Ordinance 119, 2024, by Councilmembers McCormack and Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the purchase and/or rental by one or more requirement contracts of machines, equipment, supplies, and parts needed to repair, replace, refurbish, maintain, upfit, and enhance vehicles, equipment, and machines, including labor, materials, installation, training, inspections, and related services for the various divisions of the Department of Port Control for a period of 1 year with 3 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Ordinance 145, 2024, as amended by Councilmembers Griffin, Starr, Hairston, and Santana, authorizing the Director of Community Development to enter into a grant agreement with Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corporation or its designee as the city's agent to provide construction gap financing for housing units, subsidize renovation of homes in strategically targeted areas, finance and acquisition of vacant and abandoned properties for purposes of the renovation program, and finance of beautification pilot programs in wards 5, 10, and 14. Ordinance 188, 2024, by Councilmembers McCormack and Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into one or more requirement contracts without competitive bidding with MB companies for various proprietary services of labor, equipment, parts, supplies, and materials needed for maintenance, repair, enhancement, replacement, installation, testing, audits, and training for vehicles and equipment provided by MB companies for the Department of Port Control for a period not to exceed 1 year with 4 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Ordinance 191, 2024 by Councilmember Griffin, authorizing the Clerk of Council to enter into a subscription agreement with LexisNexis to obtain online access to computer-assisted legal and other research databases, materials, and services required for the work of Cleveland City Council. Ordinance 195, 2024 by Councilmembers Conwell and Griffin by departmental request.
Please close the doors.
Authorizing the Director of Public Health to enter into an agreement or memorandum of understanding to provide essential services for the individuals and families with addiction issues and to services to prevent youth from engaging in drug experimentation and to accept payments for services provided. Ordinance 196, 2024 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into various written standard purchase and requirement contracts to provide building construction materials, equipment, supplies, and services, including labor for the various divisions of city government for a period of 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew for an additional year, exercisable by the Director of Finance. Ordinance 197, 2024 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Finance to enter into various written standard purchase and requirement contracts needed for unarmed, uniformed security guard services and for equipment, supplies, and services needed for the citywide electronic protection of physical facilities, including installation, training, labor, and materials if necessary for the various divisions of city government for a period of 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Finance. Ordinance 235, 2024 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request to amend sections 35, 37, and 38 of Ordinance 194, 2021 relating to salaries for various classifications.
I'm going to now call on Councilman Anthony Harrison to make a motion to amend 145-2024 and ask Councilman Starr if he can second it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Clerk, I make a motion to amend ordinance number 145-2024 as follows. In the third whereas clause, line 2, after Housing Advisory Board, on, strike the blank line and insert February 14th, 2024. In section 2, at the end, insert RQS 8006, comma, RL 2024-24.
Thank you. Councilman Richard Starr, would you like to second?
Council President, I will second that motion to amend ordinance number 145-2024.
Thank you.
So noted.
Without objections, the amendments are agreed to. I see no objections. The amendments are agreed to. Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember McCormack, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage. Seconded by Councilmember Casey.
Call the roll.
Griffin, Bishop, Conwell, Gray, Hairston, Harsh, House, Jones, Jones, Casey, Kelly, Moore, McCormack, Polensek, Santana, Slife, Spencer, Starr. 14 yeas.
Are we, okay, real quick, just for rules? Call the roll on the amendment, just to make sure. Can we
Griffin.
call the roll on that amendment? And I believe we got to go through each council person, but if you can call the roll on it. Thank you.
Griffin,
Yes.
Bishop, Conwell, Gray, Hairston, Harsh, House, Jones, Jones, Casey, Kelly, Moore, McCormack, Polensek, Santana, Slife, Spencer, Starr. You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. I believe I'm at call the roll on passage. As amended. Call the roll on passage as amended.
Griffin,
Yes.
Bishop, Conwell, Gray, Hairston, Harsh, House, Jones, Jones, Casey, Kelly, Moorer, McCormack, Polensek, Santana, Slife, Spencer, Starr. You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. First reading emergency
I'm sorry,
ordinances.
14 yeas.
Thank you. First reading emergency ordinances referred for administrative review and committee review.
Ordinance 260, 2024, by council members Bishop and Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into one or more contracts with City Architecture for the purpose of establishing and executing a public engagement coordination program for the Office of Capital Projects for a period of 2 years. Ordinance 261, 2024, by Councilmember Griffin, designating Jesse Owens' house as a Cleveland landmark. Ordinance 262, 2024, by Councilmember Casey, authorizing and directing the Director of Finance to establish a fund for use by the Division of Police to reimburse officers for certain expenditures. Ordinance 263, 2024, by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request, authorizing the Director of Human Resources to employ one or more professional services to administer the city's Employee Assistance Program and to provide learning and development training to various city departments on an as-needed basis and for a 1-year period with 3 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Human Resources.
First reading emergency ordinances to be passed.
Ordinance 264, 2024, by Councilmembers Conwell and Griffin by departmental request to amend sections 2B and 4 of Ordinance 895, 2022, relating to authorizing the Director of City Planning to create the Transformative Arts Projects Fund Program. Ordinance 265, 2024, by Councilmember McCormack, authorizing the Director of Department of Community Development to enter into an agreement with Tremont West Development Corporation for the public purpose of providing the arts and culture program in Tremont through the use of Ward 3 casino revenue funds. Ordinance 266, 2024, by Councilmember Starr, authorizing the Director of the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Burton Bell Car Development for the youth football recreation program through the use of Ward 5 casino revenue funds. Ordinance 267, 2024, by Councilmember Gray, authorizing the Director of Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with LAMP Learning and Mentoring Program for the RAP Writing Reading Achievement Project through the use of Ward 4 casino revenue funds. Ordinance 271, 2024, by Councilmember Conwell, authorizing the Director of Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Cleveland Cultural Gardens Federation for the 2023 One World Day Expo. Ordinance 272, 2024, by Councilmember Hairston, consenting and approving the issuance of a permit for the Our Lives Matter Run 5K event on May 5th, 2024, managed by Hermes Sports and Events.
Thank you. Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember McCormack, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage, seconded by Councilmember Casey.
Call the roll.
Griffin, Bishop, Conwell, Gray, Hairston, Harsh, House, Jones, Casey, Kelly, Moore, McCormack, Palencic, Santana, Slife, Spencer, Starr. 13 yeas.
Call the roll on passage.
Griffin, Bishop, Conwell, Gray, Hairston, Harsh, House, Jones, Casey, Kelly, Moore, McCormack, Palencic, Santana, Slife, Spencer, Starr. 13 yeas.
Thank you. First reading emergency resolutions to be adopted.
Resolution 273, 2024, by Councilmember House Jones, urging the Federal Railroad Administration to ensure that Northeast Ohio is included as part of a major overhaul of passenger rail service in the United States by including Cleveland as a stop on the Detroit-New Orleans proposed route.
Read the motion to suspend the rules.
By Councilmember McCormack, that the rules be suspended and the legislation just read be placed on final passage, seconded by Councilmember Casey.
Call the roll. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I just be added to the resolution, Councilman House Jones' resolution, please?
Thank you. Is there any objection to all of council being added to that? No. Can we have all of council added to Councilwoman House Jones's resolution?
So noted.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Griffin, Bishop, Conwell, Gray, Hairston, Harsh, House, Jones, Jones, Casey, Kelly, Moore, McCormack, Polensek, Santana, Slife, Spencer, Starr. 14 yeas.
Thank you. Call the roll on adoption.
Griffin, Bishop, Conwell, Gray, Hairston, Harsh, House, Jones, Jones, Casey, Kelly, Moore, McCormack, Polensek, Santana, Slife, Spencer, Starr. 14 yeas.
Thank you. Are there any communications?
File number 259, 2024, from Mayor Justin M. Bibb, City of Cleveland, appointing Kelly C. Britt as an alternate member of Cleveland City Planning Commission.
Thank you. Are there any condolence resolutions?
Resolutions of condolence by Councilmember Jones for Ruby Marie Alexander.
Can we hold out a number for Pastor Rodney Thomas? Pastor Rodney Thomas. Did we? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if we did or not. Any other condolence resolutions? Any other condolence resolutions? Seeing no other condolence resolutions, will all members rise for a moment of silence? Thank you. Are there any congratulatory resolutions?
Resolutions of congratulations by Councilmember Griffin for Reverend Eugene W. Ward, Jr., by Councilmember Santana for Brooklyn Campus, Cleveland Public Library.
Thank you. We do not have any presentations. Therefore, we will now move to public comment. And once again, I would remind all council members to turn around and acknowledge the speakers, and all speakers, please acknowledge your time. You have 3 minutes. When the light is yellow, that means to wrap it up. When the light is red, that means to hard stop. And first, we have Reverend Pamela M. Pinckney from Cleveland to talk about public comment leadership, representing No Fear But God and Goddess Fellowship Assembly, and not being paid by anyone. Reverend Pinckney.
Good evening. First of all, let me give you what the Lord gave me to give you, Council President. No weapon that is formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises up against you, even among your members that are betraying you, shall be condemned. This is the heritage of the servant of the Lord our God, and his righteousness is of you. The God of America is Jesus Christ, a man of color. The goddess of America would be Jesus Christ too, a woman of color. This is not a peaceful assembly, what's going on right now. The disrespect that took place in this room last week and in this building is not acceptable and is not tolerable and not to be tolerated, and it's only happening because you have a black man in that seat up there. This racism in this country, in this nation, is off of the chart. You have a black mayor and you have a brown-skinned man up there, because had brown-skinned, black, or multiracial or Native American people been doing what they're doing out there, what those white people are doing out there, we would have a crime charged against us. Back off the black man. We have rules in this country. We have laws in this country. I don't care if you wear a dashiki, I don't care what you wear. We have rules in this council, and I demand that you obey them. The God of America is Jesus Christ, who comes through the lineage of Abraham, which is through Isaac, not Ishmael. Allah is not our God. This stuff stops now. I've already called Council President. I called the United States Department of Justice, but they're not going to do anything because Ahasuerus, Nebuchadnezzar, Ahab, and Jezebel are running the country right now. Because if you notice that all the black leadership in this country is under attack by racist, sexist white America. Follow up with the phone call. I also called the FBI, but they didn't want to have the conversation. Because if we did this in Bracknell, Parma, Solon, Pepper Pike, we would be arrested and charged with a crime, but it's called civil when a white person does it. Stop disrespecting that man. And don't threaten me again with the police. I said what I meant what I said. There's no white privilege. We operate on divine favor as people of color in this city, in this nation, and in this county. And if you don't like it, it's too bad.
Thank you, Reverend. Appreciate it.
Back off of Council President Griffin. And don't you ever again come in here and disrespect him like that. I don't care who you are.
Thank you. Next, we have Dominique Brooks from Ward 4. Dominique is here to talk about housing. Dominique is not representing anyone and not being paid by anyone. Dominique Brooks, you have the floor.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
Good.
All right, my name is Dominique Brooks. Just get my notes up. For background information, I am a single mother to 3 children and I attend Cleveland State University. I was selected in January of this year to receive housing through Cleveland Housing Partners and CMHA Housing Program for the Louise Stokes Scholar House Program. After going through a preliminary application with screening questions and receiving help with the application process by several CHN employees, I was chosen to receive a home visit by a CHN employee to examine my current living situation. I was told before my home visit, CMHA will not give me an apartment for my family because I have a boy and a girl that can't share a room, and they only have 2 bedrooms. It's one thing to be denied after the preliminary screening, but to give my personal information and my baby's personal information up only to be denied, that should have been disclosed to me after the preliminary application process, which has me wondering, why did they accept our application? And then when I asked for the regulations that I violated, showing me the proof, I was told over the phone by the assistant director of CHN Housing Partners, this is a HUD rule. And in my research, this is not a HUD rule. There's no law under HUD that states such things. So why am I being denied housing for me and my 3 children for a law that does not even exist? Why do me and my children have to be turned away from housing for that reason? Who's held responsible for auditing and following up applicants that are mishandled? All I'm asking is for a safe, affordable housing for my family while I earn my degree. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we make sure that one of the council staff gets her information so that we can make sure we follow up? I know the mayor is probably going to have somebody from the administration, but I'd like to make sure that we get her information and be able to support her. Okay, thank you. All right. Next, we have Katrina Robinson, Ward 11, is here to talk about homelessness and housing, not representing anyone and not being paid by anyone. Katrina Robinson.
Hello, my name's Katrina Robinson. I'm here to speak about me going through Cleveland Housing Network. I was a homeowner in 2001. I went through the Cleveland Housing Network program. I was suggested as a single parent that you could get housing. Moving forward, I lived in the house up for 21 years. During COVID, I got attacked, only to find out that the deeds were placed. I was pushed out during COVID. The sheriff deed that I printed that was certified was fraud. I found out that just recently that the sheriff in the county didn't exist. I found out as I was going through federal court and the judge was allowing me to represent myself because I couldn't find a lawyer for the last 7 to 8 years, that I had a case that I had to write, and that the federal judge in 2008 had announced that I was the owner of the home through my warranty deed that I got from Cleveland Housing Network. I noticed as I started doing my deep research that my taxes were paid in California. Bank of America took over, which originally when I did in 2001 was Countrywide Mortgage. I never received a notice that it changed over, but thank for God that I had the background in mortgage finance and I had a degree in business and finance. I was able to do research and go deeper in. We were trained how to identify fraudulent documents. I was able to gather every document to figure out what was the cause and what's this. I found out that it was an estimate of 15 people from PH Mortgage that was from Chicago to California to, Florida, New York, who have worked together to withhold our rights within Cleveland, our home. During the process, on the side, would help people understand, hey, you have a right to protect your right, and I realized that I had more rights than I have. I was so upset during COVID. I filed a 50-page manifested, whatever you want to call it, about how it was 140 ways that someone within this city could have helped me. 140 laws, and the only law that I got was a foreclosure law that made me look like I didn't pay my bills, made me look like that I was just this crazy woman. I was placed in a psych ward. Looked like I was this crazy, mad woman who literally stood every single day, sat in the modification rooms, sat there waiting for people, no show of anybody, and they still pushed through COVID all these fraudulent documents that came from someone in the city, and if you went to the county website, I'm told, oh, what you're going to do about it. And I'm like, if you read this sheriff deed, it says that whoever took the house have a right, and the laws follow that. So meanwhile, I'm sitting here homeless, on the street, homeboarded. My grandmother told me just before she passed, hey, Katrina, the governor came out to your house. They were told by the bailiff. I didn't even get evicted by the sheriff. I got evicted by someone in the city of Cleveland bailiff. The bailiff office. Now, if you look up my name, the file disappeared. Documents disappeared to PH Mortgage. Thank goodness that I was very organized, and I had a mentor who was a federal government when I was a teenager who taught me how to notarize, keep paper trails, because she told me in 2003 that we were going to face in the future a lot of fraudulent document, and what you would need to know is how to prepare those documents. During that program, and I graduated from Tri-C, I was the youngest. At that point, I was like 18. At the time, didn't think it was important, and now I realize today it's more important than ever.
Ma'am, your time is up.
So thank you.
Thank you. Once again, can we make sure that somebody has our information so we can try to help her any kind of way? Next, we have Tan May Shaw from Ward 16 to talk about an anti-ceasefire resolution, not representing anyone and not being paid by anyone.
Good evening. My name is Tanmay Shah, and I'm a resident of Cleveland's Ward 16. I would just like to start off with Martin Luther King quote, "We do not need allies more devoted to order than to justice." He wrote this in the spring of 1964 from the jail in Birmingham. I would like to also start off by thanking Council President Blaine Griffin. Your courageous and brave actions of staunchly defending a genocide deserves a round of applause. Your statement from a couple weeks ago, calling on both sides to come to a common ground, was obviously political theater and meant to further divide the Cleveland community. Ironically, that statement and this council's refusal to do its job has brought together this community better than any resolution ever could. As I speak, the citizens of Cleveland are doing your job for you in the rotunda through the People's Council. And I want the record to reflect this was a peaceful assembly, and they were kicked out against their rights to peacefully assemble on public property. A lot has been already said about Palestine and your complicity in genocide. Palestinians have tried to educate you, meet with you, and attempted to do this the right way for the last 15 weeks. I'm certain your job isn't easy. Cleveland has been losing people and revenue for years. You're asked to do more with less each year. I'm certain your bravery in doing nothing will help attract new citizens. We, the citizens, asked a very simple thing, though. You passed a resolution in support of Israel, Ukraine, even a resolution to commemorate the band KISS. It cost the city nothing. What excuse do you have for your failure? Leaders are supposed to lead, take risks in order to achieve a better world. When history looks back, you will be remembered as a city council that ignored a genocide against the will of over 80% of Americans. I want to address a different angle, one that concerns your political future, since that's all you seem to care about. All of you are up for re-election next year. We're committed to doing everything in our power to make sure you are held accountable for your inaction. Your anti-democratic methods, ranging from what happened to PB Cleveland to your animosity of NEOC, has already galvanized people across the city who care deeply about this work. So when you go to bed tonight, other than Councilmember Rebecca Moore, I want you to ask yourself, when push comes to shove, will Blaine Griffin stand with you and use the Leadership Council Fund to protect himself or protect your future? It is never too late to do the right thing. I want to end with some advice for Council President Griffin. You should run to the people who work for you, like Jimmy Haslam and Dan Gilbert and the billionaires in the city. Ask them for more money.
Wrap up.
Because we're coming for you.
Thank you.
And you can build
Time.
your war chest, but you can't stop us.
Thank you.
Time.
Time. Thank you. Next up, we have Nicholas Marshall. Nicholas Marshall is from Ward 12 to talk about a ceasefire resolution, not representing anyone and not being paid by anyone. Nicholas Marshall.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nick Marshall. I used to be a raging racist, unfortunately, and homophobe and transphobe and xenophobe and all the phobes. I used to think Muslims were terrorists, and Israel was the bastion of freedom and democracy in the Middle East. I was a Christian in name, but in reality, my values didn't align with my proclaimed beliefs. I was a hypocrite. I went to college, I got out of my suburban bubble, learned how to read through sources. I learned how to critically think, and I had to do the hard work of unlearning a lot of what I had learned. I had to take responsibility for my own willful ignorance. I had to break down everything I thought that I knew and reevaluate all my previously held beliefs. In this process, I found Islam, a religion of radical accountability. This brings me to my main point, and the reason I tell you about my disgusting past is accountability. You are accountable for your sources in education. Do you follow Palestinian voices? Do you look at the gut-wrenching pictures, even though they're so hard to see? Do you learn about the history of self-immolation as a form of protest? Do you learn about the history of apartheid Israel and systems of oppression? Do you learn about America's litany of war crimes? Experiential knowledge of deconstructing prejudices and firmly held beliefs. There are two types. We have explicit prejudices, what this council has displayed, such as putting bombs in our car, Palestinian Hamas community, and Genocide Mike. We also have implicit prejudices, which are much harder to acknowledge and can be uncomfortable to sit with. They're sneaky patterns of thoughts and assumptions. We've seen that with calling it the Israel-Hamas war with the great Persimmons scandal, and ignoring thousands and thousands of hostages taken by Palestine. None of us want to be here protesting. We're here because we wake up in the morning thirsty. All we can think about are Palestinians without water. When we're hungry, all we can think about are starving Palestinians getting slaughtered as they go for aid. When I pick up my daughter, all I can see are Palestinians holding their deceased children and crying. We can't move on to local issues that I would love to address, like CMHA and some of our policies for low income that do nothing for low income people. But we can't move on to that until we can agree that genocide is wrong and we should have a ceasefire. We are accountable for what we can do. We cannot individually end this conflict, but we are responsible for the actions we take, but we are also responsible for the actions we don't take. You must do the hard work of deprogramming and proper re-education. What we can do is what we must do. You have the resolution in front of you. Inaction can be just as consequential as action.
Time.
Struggle in the cause of justice.
Thank you. Next, we have Wendy Bilgan from Cleveland Heights. The importance of Cleveland City Council to the greater community, not representing anyone, not being paid by anyone.
Good evening. My name is Wendy. As a longtime Jewish Clevelander, I am still calling on you, City Council, to pass an emergency permanent ceasefire resolution. Suspend the rules if you must tonight. In the week since 25-year-old active duty member Aaron Bushnell's self-immolation and protest against Israel, his final words still haunt me. He wrote on Facebook that many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery or the Jim Crow South or during South Africa's apartheid? What would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is, you're doing it right now, end quote. His meaning was clear to me. If I do nothing in response to the genocide of Palestinians right now, I have my answer about how I might have responded to other historical human rights atrocities. Amidst the muddled media debates over whether Aaron's actions were heroic or insane, we miss the unmistakable reality that his actions were born of desperation. His desperation matches the urgency of the moment, to elevate the voices of the desperate in Palestine and to act on their behalf. We do not need to agree on everything, but we do agree on some things, so let's act together tonight. Do we agree that the killing of innocent people and acts of unbridled revenge, as we are seeing in Gaza, is wrong? Do we agree that endless cycles of oppression and killing must stop? Do we agree that we have the power to stop ongoing atrocities? It's our responsibility to do so. I'm asking you tonight to use your platform and your position of power given by the citizens of Cleveland to pass an emergency ceasefire resolution tonight, suspend the rules. If you don't have the words tonight, you can use these. Whereas all human life is precious and the targeting of civilians, no matter their faith or ethnicity, is a violation of international humanitarian law and a violation of who we are as cross-cultural, diverse people of Cleveland and a city deeply affected by the killings in Gaza and Israel. Be it resolved that City Council, on behalf of the people of Cleveland, call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, a release of all hostages and wrongly detained Palestinians, and an immediate establishment of humanitarian corridors to bring aid to the people of Gaza. President Griffin, I encourage you to hearken back to your Quaker educational roots at Malone, where I also graduated, and to draw inspiration and courage from that rich tradition of nonviolence and radical social action. Let me bring us back to the question Aaron Bushnell left us all with. What would I have done in the face of historic injustice? You all have a rare opportunity now to use your authority to send a clear message that Cleveland will not support the murder of innocents, so that when you look back on this moment in history, you will be able to say, I stood up for justice and I refuse to be complicit in genocide. Thank you for hearing me. Remember the suspend the rules.
Thank you. Next we have Sarah Fadlala. She's from Richfield to talk about Palestine and the ceasefire, representing anyone, no one, and not being paid by anyone. Sarah has the floor.
Assalamu alaikum and hello. My name is Sarah Fadlallah, and I'm here to urge City Council to choose humanity and call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Palestine is a Black liberation issue. Palestine is a feminist issue. Palestine is a healthcare issue, and especially Palestine is a humanitarian issue. As members of the Council, you claim to support initiatives for food programs, safety and maternal outcomes, youth development, health and health access, all of which are being ruthlessly attacked and targeted in Gaza right now. Our taxes, which are meant to fund these local initiatives, are being reallocated away from development and funding destruction. Many have heard this quote before, but I would be remiss if I did not repeat what Nelson Mandela said on this issue. We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. The initiatives we support locally will always be at risk when our federal government continues to prioritize destruction, death, and genocide over community building. So, it's our job as constituents to demand our representatives use their voices to fight for justice, liberation, and a ceasefire to end the onslaught of devastation we are funding. If that logic alone doesn't push you into moral obligation, then I urge you to visualize the despair. Since the start of this genocide, 30,534 people were killed, meaning if we filled the Guardian Stadium almost to the brim and wiped out that population, we would have only just begun to understand the gravity of this assault. 12,300 of those killed have been children. Imagine filling the Wolstein Center with children from a field trip and erasing those in attendance in under 5 months. And now think of our beloved Brown Stadium, completely packed with another 4,000 people on the field. And understand that that's the number of innocent lives injured in this genocide. And finally, to really bring home the horror, the city of Cleveland is about 82 square miles with a population of 2.18 million people. Now imagine the entire population of Cleveland forced to live in a concentration camps in a quarter of the space, no clean water, limited access to healthcare, food, basic aid, and now you start to understand what's happening to the Palestinians trapped in Rafah, an area of 25 square miles, with 2 million held captive and being bombed endlessly. Sometimes being forced to empathize and think about how it would be for you in your own city can ignite a sense of standing up for what's right. Our revered activist Angela Davis put it plainly by saying, lifting our voices for Palestine will never be anything but an embracement of love and justice for all. Speak for justice and love, and that starts with a call for a ceasefire and allowing humanitarian aid to reach those who need it desperately. And finally, I need to say that our prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, whoever among you sees evil, let him change it with his hand. If he cannot do so, then with his tongue. If he cannot do so, then hate it in his heart, which is the weakest level of faith. Let us showcase our faith in God, in our humanity, in each other, and stand firmly on the right side of history. Free Palestine, ceasefire now.
Next, we have Riley Petro from Ward 17 to talk about free speech concerns. Riley is from the Party for Socialism and Liberation, Northeast Ohio, Answer Coalition, and not being paid by anyone.
Decorum. The council president is obsessed with this concept. He has stated over and over again that decorum needs to be preserved at city council meetings. Why? When the people of Cleveland come to their representatives and ask them to acknowledge the death of over 30,000 men, women, and children, some of whom are their own relatives, and council sits silently, why should we show you any respect or decorum? When council members lie and say we're not from this city, that we're going to put bombs under their car or throw tomatoes at them during council meetings without any evidence, what respect have you earned? The fact is, Council President, you don't want decorum or respect. You want obedience. You yourself said back in 2019 that we need, quote, we need to send a strong message that when you mess with us, you will be dealt with, unquote. It's clear from your words and your actions that you are a petty tyrant that can't stand to see his authority challenged and also doesn't know basic procedure about how to pass an amendment. Well, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we're not going anywhere. And let's face it, I know that public disruption is a valid act of protest. Councilman Conwell said so himself last week when he talked about the idea of disrupting school board meetings in order to reinstate the Get More Opportunities Fund back to our students at CMSD. Thanks, Bib. To which I say, sign me up. The people in this room stand for the children of Cleveland and the children of Palestine because our struggles are one and the same. But if we're willing to stand with this city, why aren't you willing to stand with us? I want to end my time by quoting the same thing written by Aaron Bushnell, the enlisted Air Force officer who found that self-immolation in front of the Israeli embassy was the only way to get people like you to pay attention to what's going on in Gaza that was quoted earlier. Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery, or the Jim Crow South, or apartheid? What would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is, you're doing it right now.
Thank you, Tom. Next, we have Chris Martin. Chris Martin is from Ward 3 to talk about the influence of money in politics. He's not representing anyone. He's not being paid by anyone.
Good evening, Council President Griffin. The last time I spoke here, you cut off my mic while I engaged in protected speech by listing some amounts of money each councilor has accepted from the Council Leadership Fund. Most have taken thousands of dollars from the Council Leadership Fund. That night, you did not allow me to list any of the donors to the Council Leadership Fund. These include many millionaires and billionaires giving tens of thousands of dollars every year to the Council Leadership Fund. Since then, I've sued you over your public comment policies. City Council has amended those policies, and the city has agreed to a judgment in my favor. The city will pay me $500 and reasonable attorney's fees for the privilege of avoiding having to litigate the constitutionality of your actions. I hadn't yet returned to this body for further public comment because you only allow 10 people to speak each week, and I hadn't been quick enough to sign up when I tried. Plus, the money in politics point I had wanted to make back in September got lost amidst my lawsuit. And then I thought it important for all of the counselors to hear from the many Palestinian, Jewish, and allied voices who've spoken for months to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Now it occurs to me that the same money I was criticizing back in September is currently paying for this body's refusal to hear a ceasefire resolution. You see, money influences speech. So just as money from political action committees influenced Representative Shontel Brown's and Senator Sherrod Brown's refusals to join congressional calls for a ceasefire in Gaza, so too does the money in the Council Leadership Fund influence what you will allow on this Council's agenda. I commend Councilor Moore for her public call for a ceasefire. As a Cleveland resident, as a Democratic member of Ohio's 11th Congressional District Caucus, as a Unitarian Universalist raised, halakhically Jewish man, I implore all of you to follow her example. All members of President Biden's Democratic Party, including all members of this body, Mayor Bibb, Representative Brown, and Senator Brown, should call for a ceasefire now. All of you who have remained silent, call for a ceasefire now.
Thank you. Last, we have Reverend E. Regis Bunch from Shaker Square to talk about the ceasefire resolution. He's not representing anyone. He's not being paid by anyone. Reverend Bunch.
Good evening, everyone. I am the pastor of the Fifth Christian Church in the Lee Harvard neighborhood, and I live in Shaker Square. I'm a United States Army veteran. I am a black man, as you can see, and our city's moral character is called into question in this hour. This hour is not strange to us. Back in the 90s, this same hour called this city council to declare the end of apartheid in South Africa. And now there is an air of silence that needs to be called into question. When you do the just thing and the righteous thing, it's not a comfortable thing. When I joined the military and they told me you might die, that was not a comfortable decision. And I think all of us, as we are now seeing upwards of 30,000 women and children effortlessly murdered by the state of Israel. That number alone, and to hear almost 2/3 of that number being women and children, should push us and emerge a statement to have a ceasefire yesterday and not just now. Your moral character is called into question. Because if you can be silent on this, then you can be silent in Kinsman Union, you can be silent in Lee Miles, and you can be silent in Lee Harvard. I think this young lady bringing up her situation shows you how silence works. We allow certain actors to continue while the oppressed are hurting. The Reverend J.H. Jackson said there are 3 things you can do with an advantage. 1, you can fence it in, keep things to yourself. 2nd, you can take your advantage and you can put your advantage on the necks of others. Or thirdly, you can use your advantage to the advantage of the disadvantaged. And if our mothers and grandmothers taught us anything, we are always looking to take our advantages and giving it away to those who are at a disadvantage. And if 30,000 deaths is not calling you to use your advantage, then what good is your advantage? What good is a black person to be the president of a city council that once denied black people? Now is the time to use our advantage. Thank you,
Reverend. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any introductions? Seeing no introductions, are there any announcements? Seeing no announcements, is there any miscellaneous? Seeing no miscellaneous, Madam Clerk, please excuse the absences.
By Councilmember McCormack, that the absence of Council Members Conwell, House Jones, and Santana are hereby excused, seconded by Councilmember Casey.
Thank you. Council is adjourned to the call of the chair. The next meeting of council will be on March 18th, 2024.